Hello, welcome back to Pop Culture Graveyard. I am Hollis, and today I want to pay tribute to one of my all-time favorite albums, Sandinista by The Clash. In a previous episode, while talking about the band's bootlegs, and to see the bootleg episode you can just click above, I mentioned that Sandinista was my favorite Clash album, and it is. I unabashedly love this album, and the older I get, the more I love this album. The album grows with you. I like it so much that I created the feature Magnificent 7 that I use in several of my episodes. The album was released on December 12th, 1980, so we just celebrated the 40th anniversary of this album. How fucking old am I? I thought I'd pay tribute to this unique album. How was I introduced to Sandinista? Christmas 1980. My mother, my sweet little mother, bought me Sandinista. This was the very album that Mom bought me. It's seen better days, but I rather liked the idea of my mom going into a record store back then and talking to some young man behind the counter and asking what she should get for her young son, who is still in single digits age-wise. And this clerk, who is my best friend I've never met, had the audacity to drop this triple album of dubtastic rock raga on her. I can't believe how well my mom did getting me this Christmas present. Keep in mind, this is the woman who 4 years later would be looking at my Christmas list and say, oh, he can't mean Fat Boys, he must mean Bad Boys. And I wound up with a record by Wham. So Mom did well here. The reason a great many die-hard Clash fans, at the time, and sometimes now, hate this album is because it's not punk. Well, I ask you, what's more punk than telling a legion of fans that worship you, fuck who you want us to be? This is who we are now. It doesn't get more punk rock than that. Being my favorite Clash album, it's taken a lot of abuse over the years. This is the original US version my mommy got me. It came in these solid white sleeves, and it has the classic blue-black epic labels. I have since upgraded my copy to a UK press, which sounds vastly superior to the US press. You might know it by the hype sticker that's on it. The Clash Sandinista 36-track triple album only, and then the price was supposed to be there where the star is. As I showed you, the US version had the epic labels. The British version has CBS labels with numbers on them. I love this album. So let's get into it, baby. The band always said it was recorded in 3 weeks. But the total recording time for Sandinista was something closer to 6 months. For example, the song Bank Robber, which was released in August of 1980, was sort of the beginning of the Sandinista sessions. Without the sure hand of a producer like Sandy Pearlman or Guy Stevens, the band was left to produce the album by themselves. With no one to say no, the band members and their chief engineer, the talented Bill Price, said yes to their every musical whim. The result is a magical concoction of an album that resists all attempts to get your arms around it, let alone to define it. Even the cover keeps you at a distance, with the band a mile away from you, as opposed to London Calling, where it looks like Paul Simonon is swinging his bass right at your face. This is your first hint that they're going to keep you at arm's length. The whole glorious triple album only cost $9.99 when it was released, the price of a single LP. The band accomplished this by cutting their royalties down so much, I don't believe they've ever seen any royalties from this. And what thanks do they get for bringing fans 3 albums worth of music for 1 album's price? Fans constantly trying to whittle this LP down to a double album or even single album of best cuts. I could see if you had to drop $30 on it, but come on! They gave you 2 of these discs for free. Can't you just hop around to the tracks you like and shut the fuck up? Make a playlist, you fucking infant. In their defense, even radio DJs were overwhelmed. And for those DJs, a special single LP comp was put together for radio play. For people who wanted this to be a single or a double album, no band records 36 songs with the intention of giving you a single album. This was meant to be a sprawling, unruly mess. And it is. But when you listen to the entire album, you're in the band's head in a way you would not be if this were a single LP. All their influences are in here. If this were a single LP, to this day people would be curious, how on earth did they come up with those amazing songs? If the tracks you like on Sandinista are successful math equations, then the tracks you don't like are the Clash showing all work for those equations. There's more experimentation on this album than a complete series box set of Bill Nye the Science Guy. Let's get into it. The album kicks off with Magnificent Seven, one of the greatest Clash songs ever. And it's the song the Clash thought would be a massive hit for them, totally misunderstanding the massive disco sucks sentiment of most American rock fans at the time. It only turned out to be a big hit in New York, where it got massive play on WBAI and especially WBLS, where the great DJ Frankie Crocker used to play a version of the song called the Dirty Harry mix. What Frankie did was take the Magnificent Seven instrumental called the Magnificent Dance, and he spliced in dialogue from the Clint Eastwood film of the same name. And the Clash at the time were so enamored of early hip-hop that they were thrilled that they were getting such play on a black station in New York. Mag 7 belongs in the rarefied air of It's the End of the World as We Know It by R.E.M., where a cavalcade of pop culture references are thrown at the listener with whiplash speed. The whole song is dripping with NYC attitude. So much so that I used to think that the band were singing, New York, what? Don't stop, give it all you got. It's actually the much more London-centric, you lot, what? I'm embarrassed to tell you how long it took me to figure that out. The big musical secret about Magnificent Seven is that one of the most iconic late-era Clash songs started out with someone who wasn't in the band. The band built the song out of a bass line written not by Paul Simonon, but by bassist Norman Watt Roy from Ian Dury's band, The Blockheads. Paul was away at the time doing a movie, Ladies and Gentlemen, The Fabulous Stains, with a very young Diane Lane, where Paul played bass in a band called the Looters, opposite Steve Jones and Paul Cook from the Sex Pistols. With Paul away, Norman was drafted in to play bass, along with Mickey Gallagher, who was also from the Blockheads, on keyboards. He had already worked with the band on the recording and touring of the London Calling album. So, according to Norman, Mick Jones said, "We need something funky because Joe wants to do a rap." While the band was playing the music, Joe apparently wrote all the words spontaneously, right on the spot. And Joe was doing a version of rapping. And this is 6 months before Blondie would come out with Rapture. 5 years after Aerosmith came out with Walk This Way. But still, needless to say, Norman Watt Roy was very surprised when he was not credited as the co-author on the finished album. Cryptic wordplay, nonsensical in-jokes, even Saturday Night Live catchphrases filtered through British accents. Geez, boyga! Rub shoulders with comical couplets like Italian mobster shoots a lobster, seafood restaurant gets out of hand. The fact that Joe Strummer came up with most of those lyrics on the spot is mystifying. There are many versions of Magnificent Seven. Some fade out like the album version, some stop on a dime, some are remixes, some are instrumentals, but they all rock hard. Magnificent Seven was the final single released from Sandinista. It did pretty well, but it was not the massive hit that they were expecting. Rapture by Blondie, on the other hand, which is also an awesome song, did make it all the way to #1, and well deserved. When Hitsville UK opens, you'd swear you were in a Baptist church. Then once the percussion comes in, you'd swear it's about to launch into You Can't Hurry Love. Incidentally, that awesome bouncy bass is also played by Norman Watt Roy. Hitsville UK is all about the small, independent-minded UK music scene at the time, and how all the major labels, Mutants, Creeps, and Musclemen are shaking like a leaf at the thought of being put out of business by these smaller labels, who didn't force bands to make slimy deals with smarmy eels. The song even name-checks an awful lot of small independent UK labels at the time. The song is sung as a duet between Mick Jones and his girlfriend at the time, Ellen Foley, who most people know as the original public defender on Night Court before she was replaced by Marky Post. Rock fans, of course, know her as the gorgeous voice on Meat Loaf's Bat Out of Hell album. I've always liked Hitsville UK, but in retrospect, I think it was a mistake to have Ellen Foley's voice so low in the mix. By 1980, Ellen's voice was established as one of the greatest voices in rock. I believe the song would have been better received had it been a solo piece for Ellen, rather than her and Mick's voices blended together, which neutered her usual emotionally powerful vocals The single only made it into the 50s of the UK and US charts. After all, it's not I Love a Rainy Night by Eddie Rabbitt. Incidentally, Ellen Foley's album, Spirit of St. Louis, can be seen as disc 4 of Sandinista. Mick produced it, Mick and Joe wrote most of the songs for it, and The Clash performed the music for it. The sessions for that album even overlapped and interspersed with the sessions for Sandinista. So if you haven't heard Ellen Foley's Spirit of St. Louis, check it out. There's some real gems on there. Junco Partner shows the true genius of The Clash. You know I'm big on sequencing. Having side 1 start out with Magnificent 7, only to segue into Motown Soul, and then to turn left into Jamaican dub via New Orleans Juju is a stroke of brilliance. Every other band on the planet would have crammed all of the hits, or wannabe hits, onto disc 1, and had disc 2 and 3 be the more experimental or different genre experiments, not the fucking Clash. The Clash wanted to shove all this new weird stuff they were excited about right into people's faces. This is who we are. It's the same exact reason they had people like Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five open for them at Bonds. Junco Partner is a blues song from the 50s, which probably more than any other artist, Dr. John made his own. The Clash transform it into a beautiful little reggae jaunt. Ivan Meets G.I. Joe is a real coming out party for Topper Heaton. Topper sings the song, and Topper composed all the music for it. Over that music, Joe Strummer wrote vivid lyrics about the two Cold War superpowers having a disco dance-off. It's a really fun soundtrack for a film that doesn't exist. Musically, the song sounds a little bit like a distant cousin of the combat rock track, Overpowered by Funk. Speaking of which, it's our first hint that Topper would be capable of composing the music for later hit Rock the Casbah. It's the track on this album that sounds more than any other like you're walking through Times Square at midnight, your head spinning with the hectic sounds of arcades and traffic, and the chaotic energy of the city comes through on that track. The leader has an early 1950s rock and roll feel that is as relentless as it is infectious. It's a very simple track, but the feeling they managed to evoke in those 2 minutes is pretty amazing. It's all about scandal mongers dealing in the most salacious tabloid trash, just so the straight people can live vicariously by reading their Sunday papers. It's Carl Perkins meets Profumo affair. The track Something About England doesn't come off seamlessly, but that's what's so beautiful about a band like The Clash. I love a rock band whose reach exceeds its grasp, always trying to play something new before their musical skills even caught up to it. The more you hear this track, the more you'll like it. It's got a little Ray Davies storyteller in it. Musically, it's a unique genre bender, as a lot of things here are. Somewhere between straight-up mid-tempo rocker and jingoistic murder ballad. If they had put a little barrel house piano underneath it, it would not have been out of place on London Calling. Side 2's Rebel Waltz kicks in like some sort of beautiful incidental music from Apocalypse Now. Then when the lyrics kick in, we know we're back on the battlefield. It's a pretty little melody, made murky and malevolent thanks to Clash production savvy. I could imagine this track sharing space with the not too dissimilar atmospheric songs on side 2 of Combat Rock. Look Here is a cover of a Mose Allison song from 1964, over which the band has done something either sacrilegious or glorious, depending on your feelings about Mr. Allison. It's a speedy piano-based track that to me reads as a respectful updating of the already cool original. When you add this Clash cover to the fact that the Pixies song Allison is about him, Mose has some serious alt-rock street cred. The Crooked Beat is a delightfully trippy dub track sung by Paul Simonon. Though written by Joe and Mick, it was a very easy decision to have reggae-loving Paul, who brought us Guns of Brixton, do the vocals on this, featuring judicious drumming by Topper and an outrageously funky bass line that staggers more than it walks. This is the perfect gateway track for any dub-curious Clash fans. Somebody Got Murdered has such a should-have-been-a-hit feeling to it that I can't believe it doesn't rank higher in most Clash fans' favorite songs. It's an up-tempo rocker built around another Norman Watt-Roy bass line whose slow boil opening builds to a crescendo before it kicks into gear. And when it does, holy hell, the song explodes on the Mick sung chorus. Mick had really turned himself into co-lead singer by now, and the two trade off vocals more than they ever did, which I love. The lyrics of the chorus are just plain fun. Somebody got murdered. Somebody's dead forever. That follows. Just plain fun. The song One More Time lays down the kind of Jamaican rhythm funk that the Police and Thieves era Clash could have only dreamed about. and Joe's vocals on this never sounded as authentic or crucial or righteous. One More Dub version is such heavy dread beat dread dub. It at times threatens to outshine the original that comes right before it. This track might have ended the album nicely, tacked on to the end of side 6, a sort of version reprise that brings everything full circle, but I think they put it here as a hint of what's to come later. And taken in tandem, the two are kind of an A and B side, like the old great Jamaican singles that would have the version on the B side. Disc 2, Lightning Strikes, begins with a Rasta DJ on WBAI getting a phone call from someone who sounds suspiciously like Joe Strummer, who says, "I just like to say, let's have some music now." Then the band launches into one of their funkiest, breakbeat-inspired rhythms, and Joe delivers one of his most spirited vocals on the album. Given Joe's cadences, it almost reads as a little brother song to Magnificent Seven. It's funky as fuck. Funky as fuck. One of these days, someone's gonna sample Lightning Strikes and have a big-ass hit on their hands. The next track is Up in Heaven, Not Only Here. Ladies and gentlemen, we have reached my favorite track on this album. I can't explain why. Perhaps it's because it's a perfect hybrid of every style I love from The Clash. There's the lilting quality of Stay Free, the musical bounce of Train in Vain, the power of Clash City Rockers, and the social commentary of Know Your Rights. The song decries the squalid and dangerous public housing conditions of the working poor. It's also probably my favorite song that doesn't have a proper chorus. It's very curiously constructed, and the production is equally curious. Incidentally, if you know the song, the cryptic Alianza Dollars Are Spent section is taken verbatim from a Phil Oakes song in 1965 called United Fruit, which adds a sinister and mysterious touch to the song. It refers to the Alliance for Progress, or the Alianza para el Progreso, which was a program initiated by JFK back in 1961 to establish economic cooperation between the US and Latin America. The Clash love Latin America. The ending of the track is mysterious. The track sort of fades out slowly into a high-pitched glass squink, sounding almost like the squeal of brakes on a truck, before it eventually returns to a full rocking outro. Which begs the question, why fade out at all? Curious production decisions like that are made all over this album, and it's a big reason why this album keeps people at arm's length. The next song, Corner Soul, is one of the most underrated songs on this album. This is a very mournful sounding track that decries anti-immigrant violence. Its chorus states, "Is the music calling for a river of blood?" The chorus's river of blood likely alludes to a speech made by a parliament member, Enoch Powell, about how no good could come of the races mixing or the mass immigration. The song seems to shift perspectives, checking in with various kids preparing for an impending race war rumble. The first time Corner Soul really hit me, I was out DJing and I played something off Sandinista, and a couple of songs later, some British guy who was in the bar came up to me and he requested Corner Soul, and I was so taken aback by the request. I was like, yeah, I'd like to hear that too, because that was a song I never really listened to much, and I loved it. So thank you, British guy, wherever you are. Let's Go Crazy is perhaps the most joyous track on this album. It begins and ends with a charming Plea for Peace by reggae artist Ansel Collins. It's my second favorite Let's Go Crazy. Rest in peace, Prince. But this is a lovable winner of a track. Its steel drum-driven rhythms pay a respectful nod to Caribbean soca. With the happy sound of the track comes some politically savvy lyrics. Darkness comes to settle the debt owed by a year of sus and suspect, indiscriminate use of the power of arrest. The lyrics deal with the sus laws, which allowed the police to stop and search suspicious people. And would you believe, all those suspicious people turned out to be young black men. What a crazy coincidence. Has anything changed anywhere, ever? Music that happy is crying out for serious lyrics, and serious lyrics like that really, really need uplifting music. The music and lyrics counterbalance each other perfectly, so it's a great track. Side 4's Police on My Back is another mix-sung track with Joe shadowing his vocals. It's a totally winning cover of the fantastic 1968 Equals song written by its very young guitarist Eddie Grant of Electric Avenue fame. When played live, it was always a highlight of Clash shows, where they'd usually get in the pocket and sing with hushed tones before exploding back into the chorus. Just great, just great. I love when Mick and Joe go call and response, with Mick singing the running, hiding part and Joe just coming back with the police on my back, almost like a counter melody. It's very affecting. Midnight Log presages the sound of the Stray Cats, with the Clash in full rockabilly mode. It's a sexy, sexy sound. It's a fun little evocative tune. And I wish it was longer, but at the same time, I like wishing it was longer. Great little track. The Equalizer is a great dub track. It's one of the moodiest pieces on the album. Trust me, put on headphones for The Equalizer and step into this echo chamber of a track and tell me it's not a stroke of production genius. The chorus's simple lyrics, "We don't need no gang boss, we have to equalize," are an almost meditative chant that creates the illusion of a ganja high. Headphones. The Call Up was the first single released from the album. It was the only single released before the album, on November 28, 1980. It didn't do well, but then again, it's not Lady by Kenny Rogers. The Call Up is our first hint that combat rock is coming down the pike. The lyrics are fairly cryptic, but with allusions to wheat fields and Kiev, it's seen as a Cold War protest song against the draft. But I also see it as being against the less direct and obvious call-up of selective service. I see it as being against the buying in of the propaganda and the jingoistic rhetoric of the war machine. Stay home, be with your girl. The 55 minutes past 11 probably refers to the doomsday clock, which of course counts down to the end of the world. In case you're wondering, earlier this year the scientists reset the clock to 100 seconds to midnight. It's later than you think, people. Incidentally, there's an instrumental version of the call-up, which is called the Cool Out, and it's a pretty cool B-side. The Washington Bullets give us the theme of the album, and it gives us the title of the album with its refrain of Sandinista. Nicaragua, America, Castro, Washington, and Afghan rebels all exist on an equal lyrical playing field here. Musically, it's a real hybrid, with Caribbean kettle drums, Spanish guitar, and a little church organ, all underneath an irresistible group sing-along. The Washington Bullets is one of the best songs on this album. Broadway is an odd track, somewhat reminiscent of the slower stuff on London Calling. Joe sings the entire song as a sort of punk rock raconteur. He tells a tale of being approached at 6 in the morning by a homeless guy. This homeless ex-boxer tells him his life story and how he just dreams of driving in a long black shiny car. If you're a Beastie Boys fan, this is their Johnny Royale. At the end of the song is a final little hidden track, which is a child-sung version of Guns of Brixton over piano. The child in question is Maria, the daughter of Mickey Gallagher, the keyboard player. It's a precious and precocious finish to a pretty epic side of music. Disc 3. This is the crazy disc of the album, and it's the disc that I think gives people a slanted view of the album as a whole. This disc truly separates the adventurous Clash fan from the basic bitch, less adventurous, we'll say. It kicks off with one of my favorite songs on the album, Lose This Skin, written and sung by Clashmate Time & Dog, who's got one of the most distinctive voices I've ever heard. It's a high-pitched whine that sounds somewhere between Public Image Limited's John Lydon and Jodie Foster in Nell. Timon used to play fiddle in Joe's old band, the 101ers, and his violin gives the song its idiosyncratic folk leanings. The audacity of The Clash to simply put on one of their friends. It's years ahead of its time. The only thing I can think of in recent memory that somewhat comes close. I'm thinking of Nirvana at the height of their fame on MTV Unplugged, putting the Meat Puppets on for 2 songs. That's all I can think in a modern day context. Given Timon's singing, it's the most unique track on this album. It's a great fucking song. Charlie Don't Surf pays tribute to one of the best throwaway lines of Apocalypse Now. It can be seen in retrospect as a kind of primordial sludge from which the much more serious and affecting Straight to Hell would emerge. It's just one in a series of Vietnam-centric songs that The Clash would work up. It's a very smooth track with a really cool mood. People often talk about the failed experiments on Sandinista. Those people could probably point to the following song, Mansforth Hill, as their Exhibit A. The track is nothing more than side 1 song, Something About England, played backwards, over which they overdubbed voices. Nobody wins there. A case could be made that those minutes might have been better used, but I'm sure it made sense to them at the time. The song Junkie Slip sounds as hectic and harried as a junkie trying to score. From Joe's mumblecore vocals right down to its adrenaline racing beat, this song sounds like what it's about. It's almost like a 1980 Times Square version of I'm Waiting for the Man. The song Kingston Advice is the hidden dub gem on this album, and it's easy to hide on disc 3. My favorite lyrics go, and I quote, "In these days I don't know what to do. The more I see, the more I'm destitute. In these days I don't know what to sing. The more I know, the less my tune can swing." The Clash once again are keeping it real and speaking from their most comfortable perspective, that of the downtrodden and oppressed. If you don't like Kingston Advice, you probably won't see in this album what I see in it. The Street Parade is a funk march that sees the rhythm section at their tightest. They hold it down admirably, while the saxophone and echo-drenched guitars just spray the track with texture. I consider it a real earworm. Side 6 kicks off with Version City, which is a sweet, soulful number that has a real smooth R&B feel to it. It's got throwback lyrics that see the boys riding a rhythm train. It features extensive harmonica by Lou Lewis from Eddie and the Hot Rods. The sound of the song itself is very accessible, but again, the boys bookend the song with odd production choices that at times almost make it seem like another track is playing underneath it, probably because it was. Version City is the perfect track for all the tracks that follow. Speaking of version, which is what Jamaicans call an alternate cut of a song that exists for a DJ to toast over, the rest of Side 6 features many dub versions of earlier songs. The rest of Side 6 can be seen as an extended B-side of this entire album. Living in Fame is merely a dub version of If Music Could Talk, with Clash friend Mikey Dread toasting over the top. Mikey is fantastic and elevates what could have been a missed opportunity into a real inspired burst of creativity. Mikey even name-checks the Specials, Madness, and the Selector. As Mikey states, when you living in fame, you got to live up to your name, or else you suffer and you die in shame. It's all in the game. Yeah, word the fuck up. Silicon on Sapphire is a truly bizarre song. It's basically an instrumental version of Washington Bullets, at the beginning of which Joe states, "Have you ever asked yourself who holds the key that winds up Big Ben?" After which Joe just spits out bits of dialogue, as if he's talking to or is a computer. "I request your zero variable storage. I am a Texas Instrument." Joe Botics? Very weird. Version Partner is of course a dub version of Junco Partner, which I actually like more than Junco Partner. And I like Junco Partner. Career Opportunities is sung by two little children, Luke and Ben Gallagher, the two little sons of Mickey Gallagher. They sing over a version of Career Opportunities that's borderline Muzak. Admittedly, the 2 minutes and 30-second song is a cute joke that goes on roughly 2 minutes too long. The last track on the album, Shepherd's Delight, is a dub version of Police and Thieves, which actually turns out to be a beautiful little instrumental. Of course, that being too normal, the band makes sure that it ends abruptly with Joe's speaking voice, followed by a dissonant rumble that sounds almost like a jet taking off. I can't honestly think of a better way to end an album as complex and curious as this one. It's a nice wink at their past, while at the same time making the statement that they had clearly moved on. And I think it might be the perfect goodbye. That's it. Fucking long, isn't it? Hope you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the deepest albums ever. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and don't forget to ring that little bell. And I will see you next week with a lot more cool stuff. Sandinista. Yeah.